All right, Jesse on Fire, welcome back to the channel. So full disclosure, this is the third time I'm recording this video. I never do that. I just keep on, there's so much that I want to talk about in this video, which is going to be about Jake Paul again. I want to talk about Jake Paul. I want to talk about Dana White, because Dana White is changing his tune on Jake Paul. I think we might get to see a collaboration between Dana White and Jake Paul. Either that, or Dana might actually try to, I don't know what his, anyway, Dana White might want to get in on this Jake Paul thing, is what I'm saying. Maybe. Based on his comments. But Tyron Woodley wants that fight, and Tyron Woodley has no contract. He is a complete and total free agent, okay? And that's the big money fight for Tyron Woodley right now, unless there's something I'm totally unaware of. And then you got Dylan Dennis dipping his foot in there, you know, let me save the MMA community. Okay, yeah, I'm sure if MMA, you know, held an election, and they were like, who should we get that we think has a really good chance of beating Jake Paul? They're all, how about the grappler again? Let's watch the same movie we just watched, okay? Now, Dylan Dennis is a better striker than Ben Askren, I would assume, because I think Ben Askren is probably the worst MMA striker that's ever been at such a high level. And again, just really quick, in my last video I called him garbage. What I meant was he was a garbage striker. He's obviously not a garbage fighter. He's got belts in 2 major organizations. He's a stud, just not a good striker. Garbage was relating to his striking. But I don't imagine Dylan Dennis would be anyone's top pick either, right? So we're gonna get into all that, all right? Now, if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell. Tell your friends, comment, like the video. If you don't like it, thumbs down it. I don't care, but then tell me why. Anywho, so let me start here, okay? Let's start at Tyron Woodley. So Tyron Woodley is calling for that fight, and that's the most interesting matchup to me, right? Because you got Tyron Woodley, who's a total free agent. I actually really like Tyron Woodley. You know, he's a fighter that grew on me, you know? I don't know why, like, there was something about him early in his career where I just felt like, I'm like, I don't know, I can't really feel it. But, like, he really, especially for some reason, towards the latter part of his career, like, I found myself really rooting for him, you know? Like, I really wanted him to beat Luque. I bet on Luque, but I really wanted Tyron Woodley to win, and especially when he came out the way that he did. Like, he's throwing bombs, son. He's an exciting fighter, and he throws titanic power overhand right, man. But he's Ben Askren's boy. He was there. Like, Ben Askren's like, yo, I'm not like a big entourage guy. He probably didn't say yo, but he's like, I'm not a huge entourage guy. I'm bringing just my closest people. Tyron Woodley's one of the 2 guys that he came with. Like, Tyron Woodley is his boy. And, you know, Tyron Woodley had to watch Jake Paul knock his boy out in the first and then do all that showboating, whatever. You know what Tyron Woodley's like, okay? He's super competitive. He's got a chip on his shoulder. You want to see that guy train to the, like, this is the difference. Like, if you get here's the thing. If you get Tyron Woodley this fight, right, you give, if Jake Paul actually, if Jake Paul takes a fight with Tyron Woodley, I don't want to hear anything else. I don't want to hear anything negative about Jake Paul. I mean, you could talk about him being a clown. You could talk about this being whatever, but I don't want to hear anything about him being a pussy. Nothing about him handpicking opponents, nothing. If he actually takes the fight with Tyron Woodley, everybody needs to shut the fuck up and give him respect. That's just end of story, okay? You don't need to like him. You don't need to, you know, you don't need to root for him, but you have to respect him if he takes the Tyron Woodley fight, straight up, because that is a huge risk. That's like, you're like, I'm ready for the big time. I was beaten. I believe that he beat Mike Perry in sparring. I mean, like, I believe it. If all Mike Perry could come up with was that last bit of footage where he landed a handful of punches, and like, you're telling me he didn't have earlier footage of that sparring? He just had that one little clip where he landed a couple punches. I believe Jake Paul probably got the better of Mike Perry. Now, I mean, I believe it. And he knocked out Ben Askren. But yeah, but Tyron Woodley, that's a whole different animal. You're talking about a world champion that is a, you know, knocked out Robbie Lawler stone cold. You know, you just, and I mean, even just watching how he fought against Luque, who is top of 170-pound division, like, if Tyron Woodley wants to get it on, he's as dangerous as you get in terms of titanic power. And he's basically, he's just a better version of Jake Paul, you know? Like, he doesn't have like a whole bunch of weapons, but he does have a massive right hand. And the bottom line is this: when Ben Askren was fighting Jake Paul, he didn't take it seriously. It was like, oh, it's a big joke. It's a big joke, whatever. Dude, you want someone who's going to train for that thing like it's the World Series? Give it to Tyron Woodley, because Tyron Woodley's a chip on his shoulder guy. Okay, like, he's going to be like, to him, it's like, I can't lose this. Like, I can't let myself lose this. I'm going to go smoke this dude. and he'll train like crazy, and it'll be a huge payday for him. It'll be the biggest payday that exists for Tyron. So if that fight gets made, which there's no strings, dude. There's no one who has to agree to this other than Jake Paul's team agree that he'll fight Tyron Woodley, send him the contract. You know, they battle on the numbers. And if they paid Ben Askren $1 million, they need to pay Tyron Woodley $3 million, because that will sell. That's a whole different ball game, dude. That will sell. He's fighting against a former world champion who's a knockout artist. I mean, come on, man. Come on. And it's not like he's a boxer. You know, he was a wrestler who developed very strong, you know, maybe a little bit one-dimensional, but very, very strong, very fast striking. So I really hope they make that fight. And here's the other thing. If Jake Paul takes that fight, and I'm not saying that he would, but if he took that fight and he won, if he somehow beat Tyron Woodley, do you understand, like, where that puts him as it relates to this thing? Because, like, everybody's going like, oh, this is, you know, boxing's a joke, man. Like, you know, boxing is a joke. And, like, you're right, okay? And the reason for that, the reason that boxing is in such a bad spot is because there's no organization, okay? The reason why UFC is where it is, and the reason why boxing is where it is the same reason that I've laid out when I try to explain the difference in the financial metrics as it relates to UFC versus boxing, right? The reason that guys make more money in boxing is because there's no big organization that lives on top of it. You have, like, teams, you know, like, you know, oh, it's Golden Boy Promotions, or it's this promotions, okay? Those are just basically teams that represent certain fighters. And then they're like, all right, hey, let's put this event on. It's like if Ali Abdelaziz was negotiating directly with, you know, Conor McGregor's promotional team, and then they came up with one event, and then they, you know, and these guys would probably split, or not probably, they would split the lion's share of the proceeds, right? Versus an entire machine. UFC's an organization where you know where everyone's at. Boxing has like 5 belts in every weight class, and they're like 1 million weight classes. No one knows who's who. It's just not well run. There's no overarching strategy of how let's build this fighter up. You know, like UFC has weight classes, and they have contenders, and then they have the champion, and they're really good at matching whoever up, putting them on the right card so they get visibility to the right people. If someone's a fan of a certain champion at a certain weight class, you know, like if I'm a huge Volkanovski fan, you know, and then you know that obviously I'm going to be watching when he fights, so they're going to put really strong 145-pound contenders on the same card. So I see it, I'm like, man, I would love to see that guy fight Volkanovski, and then I'm going to watch when they fight. Like that's the organization that kind of lives underneath the UFC. Boxing just does not have that. It just doesn't have it, you know, and that has driven that sport into the ground, right? To the point where all that matters in the fight business is, are people going to pay to watch? That's what I keep saying to people when, like, I told them a second that Logan Paul and Mayweather was announced, and I was like, oh, I'll buy that for sure. And they're like, and Jake Paul and Ben Askren was announced, I was like, oh, I'll buy that for sure. I'm a fan of violence, okay? Like, I'm a fan of fights. Now, I would prefer to watch utterly finely tuned athletes compete against each other. But if there's a story, I will watch. Not only will I watch, I'll pay, because I don't like stealing. Like, you know, I respect the business side. I respect all the effort that went into doing this. Even if they're going to put on such a shit show like Triller did, I'll still pay. You know, I might bitch about it so that maybe someone hears about it and they're like, man, maybe not so much music. But, like, I'm a fan of violence. And ultimately, what Jake Paul's doing is working, right? He's such a huge personality. People want to see him fight. Like, and what should that tell you? What should this tell every UFC fighter? What should this tell every fighter in the world? Like, if not, you can't, like, glean it from watching. Let me explain it, okay? What makes a bigger difference? Like, you being, like, really, really good, or you being a huge star, right? It's like being a star is what generates the eyeballs. Now, to be a big star in the UFC, you also need to be good, but you have to be doing the things outside to build your profile. Like, that's the best thing that you can do, because that's all Jake Paul did. And then Jake Paul built his profile, and then he developed the skills, right? And then he fought tomato cans, you know, to get some wins under his belt. This is actually the genesis of every single boxer. Like, they develop and they fight people that they know they can beat. Every single good boxer did this, okay? Now, I'm not saying that he's got some master plan, but from a business standpoint, he's doing the right thing. And Dana now has recognized it, because Dana said, good for him. He denied the bet with Snoop Dogg, because I would imagine, he said, I didn't make any illegal bets. Apparently that's illegal for him to bet Snoop Dogg, whatever. Obviously he made the bet and he paid him. But then he says, you know, he's doing a great job. Good for him, right? Like, wow, he's doing blah, blah. Why would Dana be so complimentary of this, right? I think Dana might want to, I mean, this is the fight business. Why would Dana not want to take this thing that Jake Paul's doing and and grab it? Like, he's a fight promoter, right? Like, he knows Triller is not like, Triller's not competition to him. If Triller actually did anything, he would just buy him. Okay, so maybe there's a way where he can co-promote an event with one of his fighters. They chop the difference and he can generate $20-30 million for the UFC. I mean, that in my mind, when I see him say something positive like that, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, he's probably thinking of how he can get in on this, you know, especially because Jake Paul just knocked out Ben Askren. Dana White is a fight fan and a fight promoter. He knows you can't question the kid like that. He's not a joke anymore, dude. He's not a joke anymore. It's just bottom line. He's not a joke anymore, okay? He might be a joke of a person. I've made videos about this too. I don't have any idea what that is, dude. Like, just because he kind of looks like a clown on stage. Dude, I'll tell you this. You want to know how you're going to gain my respect? I don't care what you do on the stage. How are you going to fight? You know? You could be the biggest idiot ever, and then you get in the ring and you perform, you're going to get respect from me, you know? And that's what he did. You know, he talked all this shit, but he said what he was going to do, and then he did it, you know? So if he takes that Tyron Woodley fight, I don't want to hear shit from anybody about him. You know, like, you can't disrespect a kid after that, right? You can hope that he loses, but you can't disrespect him, man. Like, as it relates to like him having heart and balls, I don't think it's likely that he'll fight Tyron Woodley because that's a huge risk. I mean, the whole thing gets derailed if he loses. He's better off trying to fight Dylan Dennis, who wants to fight also. But Dylan Dennis under contract. I don't know if they would even do that. It wouldn't sell as much, that's for sure. He fights Tyron Woodley, that thing's going to sell, man. And I really hope he does that. But maybe Dana's thinking about giving him Mike Perry. I mean, he has Mike Perry under contract. Mike Perry is used to making like, you know, whatever. I don't know. Mike Perry probably makes $150K a fight or something like that. Maybe 150, 150. So like he could tell Mike Perry, okay, look, dude, I'll let you fight Jake Paul and we'll give you 600K, right? And Mike Perry will be like, damn, all right, I'll do that. And then boom, Mike Perry gets, you know, like, I mean, let's say he fought 150, 150 and he lost. So he's going to get $450,000 more than he would have gotten to fight in a boxing match against a YouTuber. That's a good deal for him. And if Dana's going to do that, he's going to chop the revenue with these guys. He's going to make $25 million for the UFC probably, you know, or I don't know, maybe 15, I don't know, whatever. But he's going to make a lot of dough for the UFC. I mean, like, these fighters are just assets. Mike Perry is an asset that Dana owns. He's more valuable to him if he allows him to fight Jake Paul than if he has him fight in the UFC again. Plain and simple. So that's my guess, is that Dana's setting up to allow Mike Perry to fight Jake Paul, but I have no idea. That I'm not bulletproof on that. And the only reason is because you have this competing organization. They're not, I mean, Triller's not really competition to UFC, but Dana's never been too keen on co-promoted things, although he has tried to do that before. He tried to do it with Pride. You know what? I take that back. He is kind of keen on that. He did it with the Mayweather thing. So I think that's what he's setting up to do. That would be my guess, but I wouldn't say that I'm as confident as I was that like he was certainly for sure setting up to try to do a Khabib and Conor rematch, because that I know for sure he was. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's what I got. So hopefully Tyron Woodley gets that fight. That would be really exciting, and that would be really exciting. Anyway, if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell. Tell your friends. Peace.